Welcome to the Veterans Impact Show, where our commitment is to help, hope, and healing of our veteran family and our nation. I'm Jim Blythe, a U.S. Navy veteran and a certified senior advisor. Join us as we continue the mission of leadership and commitment to our communities and our great country. Why, you never know where we're going to go or who you're going to meet. We invite you to join in, plug in, and share in what we do. This is your Veterans Impact Show. Hey, welcome aboard. This is Jim Blythe. Joining me, my co-host, Cedric White, gunner's mate, United States Navy. And I've got to tell you, we got a great host, guest today, a Marine. Can you believe we actually got a Marine in here to tell us how, they're part of the Navy, only the men's department, right? I want to say a special thank you to DBTV Network and AUN out in California, and a special thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Symbiosis Integrative Health, as well as our Healing Thine Heart Ministries that Cedric is the head of. I also want to tell you real quick, if you go to Roku or you go to any of these things, Amazon Fire, go to DB/TV Network. And we are on Saturdays at 11 o'clock on those television networks around the world. But you can always go to YouTube or Facebook and look us up on Veterans Impact Show. So if you want to find us, we're here. And if you still have problems, call me. I'll talk to you anytime, which I've done. Now I want to introduce Ryan Pavel. Ryan, United States Marine, welcome aboard. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and I got to say, this is a good start because typically I tell people, right, they pronounce it Ryan Pavel or Pavel, but you got it right, Pavel, and I say Pavel, go to hell, and then I never forget. But for you, you got it out the gate, so I'm excited to be here.
My wife prompted me on that one. I think she talked with your PAO.
Yeah.
You went into the Marine Corps right out of high school, 17 years old. You were enlisted. What did you do in the Marine Corps, Ryan?
I did. Well, look, I was a very apathetic high schooler. I figured out pretty early on that I could do not a whole lot of work, and I could just slide by with that, that maybe a 3.0. I could run cross country, but get last in a bunch of races, but it was still an extracurricular, right? And so I applied to college, and I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and I applied to our flagship state school, University of Illinois, and they said, no, we're not letting you in, right? This is not the caliber of student that we want. And you know what? They were exactly right to reject me. So I enlisted at 17. I signed the papers while I was still a senior in high school. My parents had to be able to co-sign on that since I wasn't 18 yet. I'm an only child, so that was an interesting conversation. But they were supportive of that. And I shipped out right after I graduated from high school. I did 5 years in the Marine Corps as an Arabic translator, back and forth to Iraq a couple times. Got to spend some time in the lovely Camp Lejeune, Jacksonville, North Carolina. And that experience changed my life.
Welcome to the Great Dismal Swamp. Now you know why they call it that.
Oh, yes, indeed. And North Carolina is a beautiful place, right?
It
is.
It's
just 30,000 Marines in Jacksonville can ruin just about any town, But other than that, North Carolina is a great spot.
Well, you put that many Marines together in a few swabbies and you really got some problems. Uh-huh. I think it's really interesting, too, but when you got out of the Marine Corps, you did what I did. Now, I did a little differently. I started at SMU and figured out I wasn't ready, and so I went into the Navy. Then when I came out, I went down to the University of Texas. One of the things I did was a semester at a junior college in Dallas to kind of get reacclimated because I came right off an aircraft carrier from Vietnam. But tell us about how you started and what you did to choose your educational program, because you went all the way to be an attorney, have a Juris Doctorate.
Don't hold it against me, right? I mean, that's you're right, but yes. But look, I definitely knew that I wanted to do some sort of higher education. So 2/3 of enlisted veterans are first generation college students. There are additional challenges that first-gen students have whenever they're making that sort of transition. And then veterans as non-traditional students also have an additional layer of challenges. So I'm fortunate in the sense that I only had one of those two categories of challenges. I am not a first-gen college student. For purposes of my story, I describe myself as a emphatically not first-gen college student because my father was a physician. My father's father was a physician. My mother had her master's, right? I came from a very college-educated family. So college was always this thing that I knew growing up was something that I wanted to do or something that I should do. But the thing that flipped for me was from that rejection, which I'm very, very thankful that I had that rejection from U of I back when I was 17. That was in '04 that they rejected me. By the time that I got out of the Marine Corps, I had a lot more focus, right? There were still tons of unanswered questions about what I really wanted to do and what I should be doing with my time. But I was able to say, I want to go to school because I'm ready to go to school, right? This feels very clearly like the path that I should be following. And I'm going to be able to maximize that time. It's not going to be something of I'm going just because this is what you're supposed to do, but instead because I've earned these education benefits, I have this life experience. The next step for me is to really be able to grow my perspective, grow my knowledge, grow my capacity in higher education. Having said that, my own college search process was not exactly what we advise at Warrior Scholar Project. I was on deployment and I just Googled Arabic, college, and veterans. Like literally, that was my search criteria. And I applied to the schools that popped up. I didn't know what better way to go about searching for colleges. And University of Michigan was one of the ones that was top of that list. They have a really strong Arabic program there. There's many Arab Americans that live in and around University of Michigan. And as another flagship public state school that seemed to make a lot of sense. And so I applied in 2010 and was promptly rejected. So I thought, well, okay, I thought I was ready. I thought the school would see that I was ready. But that junior college side, community college, played this really important role. So I'll say this, then I'll just pause. But I, by that time, knew I wanted to go to school. And so when I got that rejection, I didn't just take it passively. I called them, right? Not to argue and say, how dare you reject me, but to say, hey, I really want to go here, right? I did my research. After that Google search, I did do more research and I knew I wanted to go to University of Michigan. And I said, could you give me any feedback on my application? And so I was able to talk to somebody that had reviewed my application. And they said, yes, you have this life experience. Yes, you have the Marine Corps in your background. Yes, you have some of these language skills from your time in the Marine Corps, but you haven't shown that you can actually be a good student, right? And that is an important thing for anybody that's being admitted to an excellent institution. And so I went and I enrolled on base at Coastal Carolina Community College and in North Carolina on lovely Camp Lejeune. I enrolled in whatever college classes they had that were starting that week, literally that week. I called back the admissions office and said, okay, I'm enrolled. I want this, right? I'm going to do well in these classes. And then they conditionally admitted me. So conditional on me getting A's in these community college classes, they would admit me into the same cycle I had been rejected at Michigan. And I tell that story not because that is like some sort of particular secret, but it is to me a really clear demonstration of the difference from that rejection at 17 versus at 22. I knew what I wanted at that point. I was willing to be able to fight for it. And then community college, as is the case for many, many, many enlisted veterans, was that really important way to be able to get my pathway into a great four-year institution.
You know, that's kind of what I did too. But way back when I graduated from high school, 1965, getting into the major universities was a whole lot different, a whole lot easier. What we're looking at today is along the lines of what you went through. And in my particular case, again, I had trouble academically. So I went back to the junior college and I made straight A's. My mother was so proud, she actually framed the report. But that is an important thing because I think whether you're high school or military or whatever, having that sort of introduction into the academic world. And when I started looking at your Warrior Scholar project, that's what I began to perceive out of it, that you are making that transition. You are making that introduction. Because the military has a different way of teaching. And I'm not knocking academics, but I got to tell you, the Navy had a very, very specific way of training instructors to teach and instruction. And it was worked for me. Now, how about you, Cedric?
I was the same way. I was laughing when Ryan was talking about his track background, because I was much like that too. I didn't like track. I played football. Didn't like track. So I ran the mile, and I would always be, my goal was to not be the last guy. I would always make sure there was one person behind me. Hated track. But when I finished high school, I went to junior college as well. Dallas County Community College. I was working at U-Haul, and it was in August, and I hated it. And so I decided that I needed a job, I needed a trade, and I needed somebody that was going to pay me while I learned that trade. And that's what moved me to the Navy. Afterwards, I came out and I went to Dallas Baptist University. Things had changed all over. And I think as I looked at your information, Ryan, I saw that you are involved in what is it, VRE with VA, and I took advantage of that. But a lot of it, as I'm listening and want to get into this more, a lot of it is just having someone to sort of guide you through the steps of getting into that educational area, because it's a lot of people have never done it, or it's been so long and they need somebody to, I wouldn't just say hold their hand, but give them some direction into it. And what sounds like that's what you're doing, Ryan.
Ryan, is one of the things that you guys are doing is not just teaching people how to transition into the academic world, but helping them to come back to what we used to call the real world. You know what it was like. You were in Iraq, right? Yeah. And when you come home, it's a real different thing. And on an aircraft carrier, it took us 2 or 3 weeks to get home from Vietnam. So it was different. Today, you're there, 12, 14 hours, and you're back in the States. Different world. And I think it's important. So is that part of the Warrior Scholar Project?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I think you're hitting on something that's very vital here, right? So I would say the way in which I've been part of Warrior Scholar Project now, this will be my 12th year, which is hard to believe. And I've had the privilege of serving as the CEO since 2019. So I've seen this thing grow from just like a very, very, very small idea. I got involved in its second year. It started in 2012 at Yale, and I got involved in 2013, and then had the privilege of being able to help expand a branch of it. And I can go through more of what those academic boot camps look like. But that's what I did while I was going to law school, while I was working as a high school teacher for a couple of years, and even while I was doing corporate litigation for a hot minute. I was always able to carve out some time and do this thing with that Warrior Scholar Project, and to be able to get this life-giving energy that came from it. And so when I had an opportunity to come on board full-time, and first as the COO in 2018 and then the CEO in 2019, the answer was obviously yes. And the reason for that is what you're talking about, right? Yes, it is about education. Yes, it's about how do you read Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America? How do you unpack that? How do you turn his equality of conditions argument into college level discussion and writing? How do you read the Constitution and evaluate that against the backdrop of your experience? On the STEM side, how do you do college level problem sets? How do you approach these things that maybe in high school, if you're like me, right, you just kind of phoned it in, college, you can't be phoning it in. You got to really be paying attention. So yes, it is about those raw academic skills. But underneath that, right, the academics alone, those skills are insufficient for you to really successfully transition. So one of the things that was so vital for me, and it is a shared experience for many, many, many people, I'm a big fan of thinking about what applies to all of us as veterans, what binds us, and then where are those differences, is when I was 17, I needed to be able to not really think about myself as an individual person, but rather as part of a collective, right? Why do you drill so much in boot camp? It's because what matters is, do you stand out? If you stand out, you're going to get smoked, right? Like you will be smoked for the person that is standing out. You should be moving as a unit. You should be thinking about this collective identity. And what that does is it really builds this sense of community, right? So fast forward a few years later, when I'm on my second deployment, right? So I spent in 2008 to 2009, I did a 7-month deployment to Anbar province in Iraq. And then I went back, we were home for about 5 months. Then I went back for 6 months and got out. I came home in February 2010, right? And I'm very upfront about the fact that I still, for the rest of my life, and I came out with this cognitive dissonance of this fierce pride in service, right? And working with the people to my left and right. I'm fiercely proud that I served as in the enlisted side, that I'm a Marine, right? All Marines are fiercely proud, right? We have this, sort of foolhardy pride, right? I lean into it. I love it. I genuinely do. And the things that we were a part of when I was abroad there are things that I fundamentally disagree with now, right? And are things that I consistently evaluate, and things that I think about what we were doing there and like, should we be there? And that aspect of it, that dissonance, the thing that allowed me to be able to keep going was because, hey, I raised my right hand, so did the people to my left and my right, and we're going to accomplish this mission, right? Like while I am building my own ability to think and to evaluate, I am part of this collective. I am part of something which, no matter what I feel about these things, I trust these people that are around me. I have these lifelong relationships that I knew that I was building back then, really formative times in my life. And so what happens when you get out? suddenly those connections, those communities, those things evaporate. If you don't nurture that, then it goes away. And so you go from people like me that need this collective identity, that draw so much strength, that grow, right? That have all these valuable experiences. And then suddenly you're just an individual again, right? And you go through a transition assistance program class, right? TAP, and you kind of learn about like maybe something about a resume, maybe apply for disability, maybe go to college, maybe do skill bridge, maybe just try and get a job, maybe do an apprenticeship. But whatever the thing is, you lose a huge part of that community just by definition. And so for Warrior Scholar Project, to come back to that, what really drives this thing is that sense of community. You as a student, right? It's not just about how do you read these academic texts and turn that into college level writing and college level discussion, but how do you build your perspective by talking to the people to your left and your right? Yes, your fellow veterans, but also these 18-year-olds. We always have this conversation. What can these 18-year-olds tell me about life? Well, listen, right? And also use your guidance, use the things that you've learned along the way to be able to help them. That aspect of perspective and growing yourself in community, we've found that higher education time and time and time again can be that community and can drive people towards success in the same way that it's automatic in the military. You have to work harder in the higher education landscape, but the people that do that, that is the biggest through line that we've seen for people that actually succeed in higher education and beyond post-military service.
You know, I think, too, Marine Corps, more than Navy, Air Force, Army, and all that, you've got a sense of an esprit de corps. You've got the Marines are different, okay? Look, let's face it. It's true. Marines are really different.
We all know it.
And when you guys get your globe and anchor, that's a big, big, big deal. Big deal. And there is something about the way you're trained. So that's the boots on. And now, as Cedric talks about marriage management, you got to come back and change. You can take the boots off and change your attitude and change what you're doing. All right, we're going to go to a break to hear from our sponsors that take care of us, and then we'll be right back. This is Jim Blythe and Cedric White. We're talking with Ryan, the CEO of Warrior Scholar Project. We're going to be talking about going back to college. Now, one of the other big things is, as you are a veteran and you're going back for higher education, you're going to be older than everybody else in the class. You've got some things to try and accomplish. And I'm going to be asking Ryan, who was, I'm going to assume, an interpreter, because you talked about having Iraqi language skills or Arabic language. Man, you got to cover a huge gulf to talk to people that are totally different culture. We've got to do that today to function in business. We have got to be cross-cultural. We'll be right back. This is Veterans Impact Show. Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Heart's Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation. Hey guys, we've got Ryan in, Marines, CEO of Warrior Scholarship Project. Ryan, you were in your website, it says like 4.8% of all undergraduate students are military learners. In other words, we're veterans. That's not a big percentage, but given that the overall national population, we are only typically about 1%. So that's 4 times to 5 times more. And do you find, or have you built these programs? Because we were hinting at that on sort of bringing everybody together. Because that's one of Cedric and I's big deal, is to bring this nation back together. So can you tell us then a little bit about your academic boot camps, how they work and how they accomplish what you're talking about? Please.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, this is one of the things when I talk about everything with the academic boot camps, there's no job that I would rather have than this one. And I am very privileged and honored to be able to have it because of the impact that we are able to make with these boot camps. And because it's so core to me, right? Because Warrior Scholar Project did not exist in 2010 when I got out of the Marine Corps and made my own interesting transition to higher education. And I wish that it had. So by way of explaining this, let me tell a little bit about my story where it didn't exist, but how did I actually make that transition, right? what ended up happening for me is I had these informal relationships with veterans who were a few steps further ahead of me than the process, right? People that were maybe a class year ahead or a couple semesters, they had transferred in. They already understood how to navigate the University of Michigan culture. At the time, there were 28,000 undergrads. And so I'm transferring in, I'm a transfer student, and suddenly I'm dropped into one of 28,000 people, right? Who are my people? What's my place here, right? What do I actually do? How do I function? How do I really succeed? When there is no 15 minutes prior to 15 minutes prior, right? I have to develop my own ability to manage time.
Yeah.
I have to be able to develop my own skill set on how to succeed. But the thing that really is core to me is the people, the experience of having people take me under their wing and just actually help me understand how to succeed as a student veteran. That ethos, that through line is one of the things that we really try and be able to cultivate in the Warrior Scholar Project academic boot camps. So these are 1 week programs. Every academic boot camp is a 1 week program. We're actually made a couple changes. We used to also have some 2 week ones, but as of this year, they're all 1 week for a bunch of different reasons. We can serve more people with the same number of resources. We are taking enlisted veterans who do not yet have an undergraduate degree or a bachelor's degree, and we are putting them on a college campus for 1 week for an intensive, rigorous, authentic academic boot camp. These are usually students that are not yet matriculating at that institution, or in any case, in any institution. They might have some community college experience. They might already they only have a couple classes left in the bachelor's degree. They're still eligible in that case. But everybody who's coming to us is saying, hey, I want to better myself and my ability. I want to be able to improve my chances to make informed choices about higher education and to really be able to maximize this experience. You know, as an aside, the education benefits right now that the VA offers are incredible, right? I got out in 2010, as I keep saying. That was about a year after the implementation of the post 9/11 GI Bill. Because I was also to take some community college classes and other things, I was able to get my undergraduate degree and my law school degree covered by the GI Bill. Undergrad and law school. If you use it in the right way, I mean, that is hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm very upfront about that. I'm incredibly grateful. Yes, I earned it, but that is a lot. That's a huge investment from the country in me, right? And so I view a lot of my obligation now to be able to give back in public service and to be able to continue to pay that back, because that changed me. Higher education changed me. We view the same thing as true for every one of our students, right? We've had about 2,500 people go through these academic boot camps so far. We're really proud to say that over 90% of them go on to pursue and complete their undergraduate degrees. To give you some frame of reference, the overall enlisted veteran population, about 47% of enlisted veterans that start their degrees complete their degrees, right? So for us,
only
it's over
47.
Yeah, 47. 47
Wow.
is the yeah. And interestingly, that sounds low, and it is. It needs to get a lot higher, but that is even twice as much as the overall financially independent student population. So if you compare it against traditional students, then it is low. If you compare it against just overall financially independent adult learners, veterans do about twice as well. They're about twice as likely to succeed as their civilian peers. But we want students to make those informed choices. So we bring them to a campus. We have 19 college university partners throughout the country this year. Students don't have to be saying, I want to go to this institution, but we work with really high caliber institutions so
Like
that these
some of
student
them.
veterans can understand what they're capable of and
So-
how they can really excel in higher education. And by bringing them there, sleeping in the residence halls, eating in the dining facilities, engaging with professors, and being mentored by fellow veterans who are further ahead than them in the process, we are really able to see these profound changes in 1 week, in about 75 hours of work that we cram into that week. So we mean it when we call it a boot camp.
Ryan, what about the family? What about the families? What about the wives, children? Because you in your deal, you said the average age, which that kind of blew me away, is 32. Because when I was there, I'd say the average age of the veteran going back to college, because after Vietnam, was probably 22, with 10 years younger. So they're either spending more time in the military or they're delaying, but they've got families. By 32, most people have got families. And does this help? Do you incorporate into your Warrior Scholarship Project some of that information for transition?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to answer it. So one of the things that we get asked all the time is, do we accept dependents for our Warrior Scholar Project boot camps? I would say once or twice a year, this comes up and we have some sort, we evaluate this against our strategic plans. And our answer is no, that we don't extend that to dependents. We would be thrilled for somebody to take this model and replicate it for dependents, right? Like that would be, we were open source in that regard, would love to be able to talk to folks that want to be able to take this and run it to ground and do that. For us, the need is so vast within the enlisted veteran space that until we're able to move the needle on the population that we currently serve, we're not going to expand that window, right? Frame of reference for that, all told, through all of our programs this year, we'll serve about 1,000 enlisted veterans. About 400 of those will be through these core academic boot camps. There are about 100,000 enlisted service members who will start higher education this year. Every single year, there's about 100,000. So that delta is huge, and we want to move that. We want to move the needle on that.
That is huge. Well, we're going to take a break in just a second. And Cedric, I know it's getting late. I know you've got to go take care of your wife, and blessings on her and Godspeed. And we'll see you a little bit later today. So Cedric's wife's got to go to a doctor's appointment. So we're going to excuse him for that. Thank you, brother.
Ryan, it was a pleasure. Thank you. And there's a lot of information. I'll be contacting you because there's a lot of people that I know that need to see you.
Absolutely.
Love to hear it. Thank you so much, Cedric.
And when we come back, we're going to talk about that more. Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Hearts Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation. Hi, I'm talking with Ryan Pavel, and I got to tell you, this is a very interesting conversation because what he's talking about, I went through when I came back from college, or from the military, from Navy, from Vietnam. So one of the things that I would like to ask you, Ryan, and Jordan, who's my great engineer, can you put up the website since Cedric had to leave so we can show that for the Warrior Scholarship? I think one of the most interesting things is what you're doing to help guys be successful and help military families be successful. Now, when I went aboard the Truman several years ago for a media day and we were off the coast of Jacksonville, I got to fly out. I interviewed probably 25 or 30 active duty military, and every one of them was taking online courses. And, that's a totally different deal. That's got to be huge. But is that a good preparation for going into college? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. It is the right question, and it is one that is very important for the current state of higher education as it pertains to veterans. So my answer is it is very contextually dependent. Sometimes higher education can be pursued through an online route, and it can be very helpful, right? We actually follow through on that. We offer some of our programs virtually, some virtual academic boot camps. And that's because from an equity and access standpoint, we acknowledge, even though our boot camps are free, right? Even though it is something that, our budget is about $5 million a year, right? So my job working with the team and our board is to raise that amount of money to make this completely free. We have college universities who offer in-kind support and foundation support. But for the veterans, there's nothing that they're paying, even though it's free, even though we have all of this data about the life-changing impact that can happen in this 1 week at these boot camps. For some people, to your question about families and those things, some people don't have the ability to be able to come to one of our boot camps. And so we do offer those virtual options.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And the other component of that is actually one of our big initiatives this year is launching an on-demand version. So the virtual boot camps that we currently offer are live instruction, but there's also barriers to entry, right? Somebody still has to be able to allocate that amount of time in front of a computer screen in live instruction. So we're working with a couple important partners that by the end of this year, we will launch an on-demand version of our college success course, which should help anybody, no matter where in the world they are, no matter if they're a veteran or not, frankly, they can have access to what it looks like, what the conversations are that we're having in WSP that are helping people make that successful transition and make those informed choices. And that also connects really specifically to your question on online. So part of it is, yes, we believe in it, but it has to be something which is really important and really intentional with how you use it. So with online schools, veterans are twice as likely than non-veterans to pursue for-profit degrees. There's a lot of systemic reasons why that's the case. For-profit is almost always going to be something which is online. There are also a lot of nonprofit options which are online. But there is a cottage industry, right, that is really built around trying to be able to recruit to veterans and say, let's get your degree as quickly, as easily as possible, right? Almost to the point that it's just sort of like, hey, you need this credential. Degrees are just about the credential. Let's just do it. Yes, we tap into tuition assistance and education benefits. Just come through, just do your thing. Time and time and time again, for the thousands of veterans that I've spoken to since I've been doing student veteran advocacy work for 15 years now, when people get those degrees, it is far less likely that they end up getting this really meaningful college experience. Now, it is true for some careers, all you need is the credential. That is true. Sometimes if that's what somebody knows, they want to end up in this spot, they need this credential, this is the quickest path to get it, Godspeed, right? But for a lot of other people that are using college as some aspect of exploration, right, that are using it ideally, right, the maximized version of college, as I was describing, is also to build your perspective and your community. That is much harder to do in an online environment, right? It's not built to be able to facilitate that. And so we encourage veterans, even if they have things that are more, that they're non-traditional students, right? To your point, the average age, right? So they're more likely to have families. They're more likely to have disabilities, right? I'm a disabled veteran, and my disability actually manifested while I was in law school, and I had to work with the accommodations office to be able to actually work through things with my disability. Things are more complicated, and yet, for most people, we find that there is a tremendous value to trying to pursue at least some portion of your higher education in person. It fundamentally changes things. It's not for everybody, but making an informed choice and understanding what you are trying to get out of higher education, that is the key.
I think one of the things that I can add to that is sometimes it's not what you know, but who you know that counts. So these relationships with professors, these relationships with other students. And one of the things that I did was after I got out of college, I went and I took a bunch of professional certification classes. And I worked to get my MAI appraiser's license. I chose not to get it, but in those classes, I met guys who were working for major financial institutions. I did the same thing, getting commercial leasing, property management, all of these things, and finance. I had a degree in finance, but I didn't really know the mortgage industry. I didn't know FHA. So continuing the education is also building relationships, man. And I'll never forget that I was working on a project and I go, gosh, I remember this guy from the Hartford Insurance Company. I called him up and I said, I've got this problem I'm trying to do. And he goes, oh yeah, Jim, that's how you go about doing it. I go, wow. All about relationships. There is an art too to building relationships, I think. And for me, it was always, and don't laugh when I say this, acting dumb. Gee, I've never done this before. I really need some help. Can you kind of guide me here? And then you get to know somebody.
Yeah.
And it's truly amazing. One of the things that I want to also ask you about is your Career Pathways Initiative. And the reason is I hear so many young people, really young people, because I work with Sea Cadets, I work with youth, and they say, well, gee, I don't know what I want to do. Why would I go to college? I don't know what I want to do. And when I saw that Career Pathway Initiative, I kind of went, what is he talking about there? Because that's maybe something that could be tremendously powerful. Can you explain, go into that, please?
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's the perfect tee up. You talking about relationships. I did an interview with Ben Walter, the CEO of Chase for Business. I was on his podcast last year. His podcast is called The Unshakables. It's very, very worthwhile. He's an excellent interviewer, and he interviews people that are entrepreneurs and entrepreneur types. And his question at the end was, what's the most valuable lesson that I've learned throughout my path? And it was exactly that it's all relationships.
Yeah.
Just everything is relationships, right? And my version of that is something which I think resonates a lot with what you just said, where it's not transactional relationships. It's not networking for the sake of building your Rolodex so that you can do these things, right? It's going into things and being your authentic self, which is hard, right? In a lot of different places to be able to be who you are. and to really show up as whatever your identity is. But to do that and to understand who other people are. When I keep talking about perspective and community, this is what it cannot happen without those relationships. It can't, right? You have to be able to really listen to people. And that comes into play for career pathways. It comes into play for higher education and just in general for life, right? The richness of life is being able to have your opinions and then to be able to have your beliefs and to learn and to evaluate and to grow along the way. One of my favorite quotes is John Stuart Mill from On Liberty. He says, he who knows only his side of the case knows little of that. And I like that. To me is everything, right? Like if you can only defend your own positions, if you stay so much in your bubble, if you're not building relationships, not just with people that agree with you, but with people that are going to push you, then you will not grow. You will atrophy, right? You will wither on the vine. And so how do you build those things? And that comes true in particular for career side. So if you were to poll somehow, if you were to magically poll all the enlisted veterans that I've mentored and that I've talked to about law school over the years, there's been many. I bet that if you were to ask them, what's the question that Ryan asks? What's the first question, right? After kind of like, why law school, right? But it always comes back to, do you know anybody who's practicing law in the way that you want to practice, right? Do you know any lawyers who are doing the thing that you think you want to do with this law degree? Because if the answer to that question is no, my guidance to them is, yeah, I can still help you. Yeah, I can review your personal statements, but this isn't going to stick in the right way. There's this huge variance in between what people think lawyers do and what they actually do. The same thing is true for any number of professions. And how do you actually resolve that? It's by building meaningful relationships where you can get answers to the question, not just what do you do, right? Which is at a high level, but what did you do today? What was on your calendar yesterday? What went wrong yesterday? What problems do you have to solve? What things are you evaluating? What things are you planning for tomorrow? Those are the sorts of real questions that come from authentic relationship building that allow people to make those informed choices. So when we talk about higher education, if it's a degree for the sake of getting a degree, we are not a fan of that. This is actually one of the big issues with how great the education benefits are. And I say this is, again, a huge beneficiary of them. Veterans undervalue the opportunity cost of their time. They say, well, college is free. I guess I should do it and I'll kind of figure out the career side afterwards. No, that is time. That is your time. You earned those benefits. And then this is your time that you are sinking into this. So make those informed choices by using your network. The veteran network is vast, right? And we want to help each other. Even outside of just the veteran service organization space, there are so many veterans. So use your network and find something you think you want to do and then work that backwards. Do I need a degree? Maybe. If so, how do I make that happen? If I don't need a degree, then I shouldn't just be pursuing one for the sake of pursuing one in most cases. So the Career Pathways Initiative for WSP is a new initiative. We actually launched this for the first time in 2024. So this is our first pilot cohort that we're working with right now. And we were resistant to it for a period of time, to be honest. We had a lot of internal conversations. I also pushed back on it, right? And eventually now we're at the point that I'm fully behind it. But the reason that I wasn't so sure about it is there are veteran service organizations that are doing terrific work squarely in the workforce development space. So is it clouding our mission? Is it mission creep? Is it something where we're trying to push into an area that we shouldn't, right? These are sort of really important questions for any nonprofit leadership team to be asking. And what we realized is that Career Pathways at Warrior Scholar Project has a more narrow focus. It is through the lens of higher education. So right now it's only open to alumni of our program. That may change as we continue to grow and as we test what the pilot surveys, what this looks like in the coming years and depending on funding. But how do you make those informed choices about your career while you are in the higher education space? What internships should you be doing? How do you inform your higher education path by virtue of the career that you are looking for? So we are really trying to do it through the same lens of education. So career pathways, but through a very informed and specific lens of the role of education in advancing those career pathways.
Man, that's important. I know that while I was going through college, I wanted to be in real estate down at the University of Texas. And I became a realtor, and then I joined the board of realtors, and then I got involved and I met everybody I humanly could. And that helped me enormously. But one of the things too that I found, and I was thinking about it as we were talking, and you can expound on this, what we learned in the military was many of the things you're talking about. Hey, if you got hey Jim, man, I know you're the maintenance administration guy, but man, we got a major problem. We can't get this part. We can't get this. Okay, I know the guy over at such and such, and I'll go twist his arm a little bit, or I'll buy him a bottle of whatever. We shouldn't talk about that. But building relationships outside of your sphere. The other thing that I think I learned was how to deal with difficult personalities and how to build relationship with people that were different from me.
Yes.
And when I was in the Navy, we had a tremendous number of senior enlisted and officers who were World War II and Korea. Many of them suffered from some PTS. In most cases, I was very successful in building relationships with those guys. I only had one that I couldn't. And, learning how to build a relationship with a difficult personality, I learned that in the Navy. Because you had to. If you're on a bird farm, with 3,500 people, and you got to get something done, then you better not be a jerk. You better be plugged in,
Yeah.
And
I mean, I couldn't, my head's going to fall off if I nod any harder here, Jim. I mean, I think that's, there's two, I couldn't even wait. The two things that you said there that I think are really important that I just want to foot stomp on. One is that the power of the military is that you cycle through leaders, right? You learn what really good leadership looks like. You learn what really bad leadership looks like. Most veterans can attest to that, right? I had some phenomenal leaders that still influence and inform my leadership style today. And I also learned from some people that really just did not motivate me, right? You see that. Everybody talks about that, right? The Lance Corporal Underground, right? The E4 Mafia, whatever you want to call it, right? It's known. And those things really matter. Your reputation, your values. Are you a values-driven leader? Are you somebody that wants to be able to actually incorporate perspectives? Are you somebody that people respect, right? That they are doing the thing that you're telling them needs to get done, not just because you're their leader and they technically have to, but because they respect your perspective and they're doing it because they actually believe in that. And again, the through line for all of this is real relationships. And then the aspect as well of, there's a couple knuckleheads, right? Like you said, right? Like I do consider myself to be pretty good at building bridges and being open to perspective, but there's some people in the Marine Corps from my Marine Corps days that I just, I'm not interested in trying to build a relationship there.
Well,
right? And that is also okay.
That is okay.
Be friendly with everybody. But yeah, it's so important to build relationships along the way.
And Ryan, you're going to find that in business as well. And something that I learned a long time ago is take no for no and quit trying to beat a dead horse and go on to the next situation. One of the things too, though, that I learned was when I'm working with difficult personalities, and I had a number of zoning cases, I never lost a zoning case because I started working with the people that I found out were going to be my adversaries. And I got them on my side. How do you get people on your side? Well, you give them something they want, which may not always be what you think it is. And then all of a sudden, you've got an advocate. And I'll never forget, I walked into the city council meeting and the mayor said, "Oh, Jim, this guy's going to show up and he's going to rip you a new one and he's going to fight with you and all this jazz." I said, "Really?" When the guy came, I had him sit next to me, and when the mayor introduced me, I said, "Mr. Mayor, I'd like to have this person stand up and talk about our project because I've shown it to him." The mayor's jaw dropped. And this guy who had been the monster against the city council and every developer is standing up and talking about what a great guy I am. It worked. You got to build relationships. All right, when we come back, I'm going to continue to build a relationship with Ryan Pavel. I got it. I'm sorry. Pavel. You were joking about that.
You got it right out the gate. That's what matters.
Yeah. All right. We're going to be right back. This is Veterans Impact Show. And we're going to again tell you how to find us on Amazon Fire, Roku, and all that. This is Veterans Impact. Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Hearts Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation. Hey, I am having a great discussion with a Marine. I have had a lot of great discussions with Marines. I get to go to the Marine Corps Ball every year. Of course, they put me at a table in the back of the room, right? I think it's important. We've been talking about building relationships, and we've been talking about what they do with their academic boot camp and what the Warrior Scholar Project is. Again, go to Warrior Scholar Project. What if somebody wanted to call and get information, Ryan? I've got a phone number. Would you like to give out that number? And Diane's going to post it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So our phone number is 202-796-8777. Did I get the right number of sevens? 8777. I did it. All right, Jim. There we go. See, this was my test. I can continue to be CEO because I got the right number of sevens in our phone number. Warrior-scholar.org. There's a ton of information on there. The actual application process, we've broken it down really specifically so that we want people to be informed about Warrior Scholar Project before they even have the opportunity to complete the full application. So if you are an enlisted veteran who does not yet have your undergraduate degree and you're interested in checking this out, on that website, warrior-scholar.org, you can click Attend a Boot Camp at the top. That will lead you to an interest form. It takes about 60 seconds to fill out. It's very quick. It's intended to be quick. We just gather some basic information, and then you actually you set up a live conversation with a member of our outreach team. So we want to learn about you. We want to tell you more about WSP. We want to make sure there's a fit. Our goal is that everybody who does complete an application, that we want to be able to grow our capacity to match that need, right? So if you are a good fit for it, this is not meant to be something that, even though we have a Warrior Scholar Project at Harvard, right? This is not application to Harvard. We want to be able to take you there to be able to help you understand what this experience is like. So that's the best way. Anybody who's listening or watching that's interested, if you know enlisted veterans who do not yet have their undergraduate degree who could benefit from this, that's the best place to go. And then you get this experience like what we're talking about here.
Well, you also have a graduate school support. So if you're a fighter pilot and you want to go to graduate school after you go out, this is a great way to help you as well. I mean, they're a step ahead because, the difference between a Navy fighter pilot and God knows who God is. Navy fighter pilot thinks he's God. Well, I want to hear about that.
Yeah, so as of right now, right, our graduate school programs are still focused on the enlisted side, right, and that's actually born. Part of this is my own experience when I was a law student at University of Virginia School of Law, phenomenal law school, love Charlottesville, Virginia. I was one of a very small group of enlisted veterans who were there, and there's a couple dozen commissioned officers, and that's great that they're there. But we also need to get a lot more enlisted veterans who are setting their sights on top law schools, on top MBA programs, on PhD programs. So our graduate school program is different. It's actually it's more similar to the career pathways, where it is a longer term mentorship engagement because it's a lot more specific, right? The undergraduate side, we could be pretty broad spectrum. It's about how do you learn, how do you read, write, discuss, excel as an undergraduate student. By the time you're at the graduate school level, there's a lot of variance in between what it takes to succeed in law versus pursuing an MD, right? Versus pursuing a PhD, something of that nature. But you'll find, again, the through line for all of this is relationships, right? And I'm reminded of some of the people that go through this, right? I was actually speaking of the Harvard program. Yesterday, I reconnected with one of our alum, Charlie, who went through Warrior Scholar Project back in 2019, and he was still an active duty sailor at the time. And Charlie went through this boot camp, came out fired up. He said, "All right, before I even get out, I'm going to get everybody from my unit to go through WSP." And he did, right? He got a lot of people from his unit, right? He was this zealous advocate that said, "This thing changed my trajectory, right? Let me get more people from my active duty unit that are coming into this." That power of relationships there. Charlie had that experience, and then people that trusted him, he brought them into Warrior Scholar Project. He went on to pursue his undergrad at Columbia. Now he is at a top investment firm, and he is one of a very few set of enlisted veterans that is at this firm. He's the example. He's a sort of person that 1 week with our program is able to be this touchstone for him that, yes, I think Charlie would have been successful even without Warrior Scholar Project, right? That's true for a lot of our folks. They would have found their way. But if we can be that catalyst so that every decision that he's making after that is more informed and is more focused so that he can go forth and he can accomplish what he needs to accomplish, then that is what WSP is about, that informed set of choices and that confidence to not sell yourself short and just say, you know what, I missed the boat on higher education. No, you have what it takes. If Charlie could do it, you could do it too.
Absolutely. And I think that's important. The whole purpose of what our program is about help, hope, and healing. And so when you get educated, when you're able to do a better job, when you are passionate about what you do, and I think a lot of what higher education does is help you with that passion. So Ryan, thank you so much for being on board with that. And I know you are a passionate Marine. I got to tell you, we're going to be sending people to you guys all the time. So again,
Please.
the phone number is 202-796-8777, and it's Warrior Scholar Project. Go to it, find out about it. It's an important thing. Now, I want to say thank you, and this is an important program. We'd like for you to share it. So share it on Facebook, share it on YouTube. If you see us on Amazon Fire and Roku, then you can go to Veterans Impact Show and you can share that link with somebody else. It's important that our enlisted veterans and our enlisted active duty know that there is help to get a better life out there. That's why literally we became military, was to get a better life. And we became military to save this country. And my passion is, let's bring this country back together. Let's bring everybody together and build relationships, both sides of the aisle, where we got positive solutions to negative problems, and quit the blame game, quit the we did it, they did it. Let's focus on how we go forward. So I like to end with a prayer. So Lord God of the universe, we are so thankful for all you do, and for men like Ryan and organizations like Warrior Scholarship Project. God, we're thankful for our active duty military and first responders, those who run into the fire instead of away from it. And we're thankful, God, that they become veterans who are interested in bringing this nation back together. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In your holy name we pray, amen. Thank you again. Please share this. Please get this out. If you can, I'm going to get it out. Share so we can help more guys get higher education and be successful in life. This is Veterans Impact Show. We're here for you. Send me a note. Send me an email. I want to answer them.